Rolling here. Welcome to another 21st Century China Center public lecture. As you know, I am Victor Shi. Today, we are very happy to have Professor Da Wei from Tsinghua University to join us. Before I introduce him fully, just a quick note about who we are. Here at the School of Global Policy and Strategy at UC San Diego, we are a top-ranked professional school in international affairs and public policy. We offer several master's degree programs for students, including one that focuses exclusively on the study of China, called the Master of Chinese Economic and Political Affairs, or MCPA for short. The 21st Century China Center, meanwhile, is a research center and think tank based at UC San Diego. We're home to a team of 20+ active researchers who specialize in a wide array of subjects, including Chinese politics, economy, society, international relations, the environment, and history. And it makes us one of the premier hubs for studying contemporary China. I am Victor Shi, Director of 21st Century China Center and the Homulam Chair in China and Pacific Relations at UCSD. Today, we're very honored to have Professor Da Wei from Tsinghua University. Professor Da is the director of the Center of International Security and Strategy, CISS, at Tsinghua University, as well as a professor in the Department of International Relations. Professor Da is one of the foremost experts of the United States, based in China for decades. He worked at the China Institute of Contemporary and International Relations, short for KICR, ultimately serving as a director of the Institute of American Studies. So again, one of the foremost experts on the U.S. in China. Then he was the assistant president for the University of International Relations. He's written hundreds of policy papers and published dozens of academic papers in journals in the US and China. And most importantly, he's written multiple notes that have been read and commented by the top leadership of China. That's very important in China. So again, it's an honor to have him today to talk to us about how people in China see America. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you, Aaron, Victor. Sorry. Thank you, Victor, and thank 21CC for having me here at UCSD. I was here last July. That was, I still remember, that was my first visit to the United States after the COVID, so it's always great to be back here. So today, what I'm going to do is I will spend about 20 to 30 minutes talking about a very big topic. Then we can open the floor, of course, have a discussion with Victor, and then open the floor for Q&A and the discussion. So the very big topic is the changing image of the U.S. in China in the strategic competition era. So as Victor introduced, I work at Tsinghua now, teaching there and also directing a research institute there. So, but from January 6th to April 6th, I'm visiting scholar at Stanford University. So basically, I just travel down from Palo to here, so I have no time difference. It's good. Yeah. So okay. Of course, I think we have the reason I want to talk this topic is we at our center last year we did actually it's already 1 year ago we did a poll in China to investigating how Chinese people view the international security affairs, including several other countries, what kind of changes we have experienced. We always, many scholars always cite this picture. That's Pew research. Pew has done this research about how Americans view China. very inactively. Basically, this is kind of consensus here. So I was asked by Chinese government to do the. I mean, about 2 years ago, they said, "Can you do something? Can you do something to show that we are good guy?" I didn't want to do that because I don't want to do something just to show that they are wrong, we are correct. But I think the outside world really, I think the outside world lack the knowledge or lack the information. How does we Chinese view the outside world? I mean, that's more important. So with that blessing from the government, because they want me to do some investigation or survey, I did a survey in China about how does Chinese view the outside world, including the United States. So I share some views with you. So I just picked. We have about 40, almost 40 questions for our for the people that we talk to. We use internet and the telephone both. So we interviewed about more than 2,000 samples, so it's a lot. Helping with a professional company. So one of the things that one of the first picture I want to share with you is the impression about some other countries. So I gave them several: U.S., Japan, India, and South Korea, EU, ASEAN country, and Russia. So basically 5 options: very favorable, somewhat favorable, neutral, somewhat unfavorable, very unfavorable. So very unfortunately, the U.S. ranked the last one. So basically how much it is. So if we combine very unfavorable with somewhat unfavorable, I think almost 60% of Chinese people say they have unfavorable view about the U.S. If we compare with the previous one, of course, the U.S. According to Pew, more than 80% Americans have unfavorable view with China. But the difference is they didn't provide a neutral option, so they only have basically favorable or unfavorable. So in our investigation, about 60 say they have unfavorable view on the U.S., while another almost 28.7% people say they have neutral view, but only about 10% of the Chinese ordinary people say they have favorable view on the U.S. So this is a not very high number, right? 12.2% of Chinese, and the U.S. rank, the last one, and Japan second to the last one, and Russia have the most favorable view in China. No matter you like it or not, or I like it or not, I mean, this outcome, sometimes many outcomes surprised me a lot, but I've thought that Russia, maybe we have some good impression about Russia, but it's very high. Much more constructive than the rest of the, even including ASEAN country. So this is the first thing I want to say. And secondly, this is what is the most urgent threat. What is most, we say international security threat to China. So here, this is the U.S. The confrontation and the conflict between China and the U.S. It ranks number 3. Looks not too bad, but I mean, the first one, because we did it 1 year ago, so the first one was global pandemic. So probably we will do it maybe in next 2 months again, but probably this time I think pandemic will not on that, as be listed as a priority. The second one actually is the international forces intervention in Taiwan. So actually it's still related to Taiwan. So I will say almost 40% of people think Taiwan issue, I mean, the U.S., put it in this way, the U.S. intervention to Taiwan is the most urgent thing. Then 38.6 people say China-U.S. Tension and the conflict are most, biggest threat to China. So the third thing is that one, which, China, U.S., Russia, EU, and also I gave them an international organization, UN, which one is the most influential actor in international affairs. So I like people to choose from 5 to 1. So 5 is the most influential, most important players in international arena. So surprisingly, China, 53.4 people gave China a 5, a score 5, while only 52.1 people gave the US 5. While 32.7 gave China a 4, 27.7 gave the US a 4. So that means most Chinese we interviewed think China is the most important player in the world. Well, the US is almost equal, but lag behind China. So that's something really surprised me a lot. Yeah. What is the future? What is the future of China-US relations? So Chinese people, what they surprised me is Chinese people are very optimistic about everything. They have very, very strong optimistic sentiments. So almost 40% of those people believe that after 5 years or within 5 years, the China-US relations will get improved greatly. So the 40% plus, I'm sorry, it's improved. It's 40%. The 6.9 say greatly improved. So altogether, 45% of people believe that China-US relations will get improved in 5 years. So, and again, almost 30 people say just the same unchanged. So basically, they believe this is we will have a better relations with the US in next 5 years. And we asked them, what is the main reason for the tension? Who should be blamed? To be honest, who should be blamed for this bad China-US relations? So 36% people say the US should be blamed for this, tension between China and the US. And then 2.6 of this is something understandable, right? 2.6 people say China should be blamed. But then the rest of them, basically, they say there are some different, interest conflicts and also different ideologies. So it's 50 to 50. I mean, two sides need to be blamed, but 36% people say the US should be blamed unilaterally. So, of course, those are some of the outcome we found that actually. Of course, we have more detailed questions and analysis. So the income level, and the educational attainment, how many years you have the education, your age, and the type of the media you regularly use every day, all plays a role in shaping Chinese people's perspective on international affairs and the US. So to put it in a simple way, the richer you are, probably you will have basically the richer and the people who have longer education and who is younger and also who use social media and foreign media a lot. Those people have very different view with those people who have a lower income and have a shorter period of education and also older. And also use or follows the official media very much in China. So these are the two extreme, I will say. So I cite several statistics here about the educational attainment, like among the people who have a master or doctor degree, 40% of them say the world is unsafe or somewhat unsafe. So majority in the other group of age and or like the education level, they are very optimistic about the world. They say it's safe, and it's safer than 5 years ago. It will be even safer 5 years later. But when we ask those people who have higher degree of education, they will 40% say it's not safe, and the overall trend is the higher level of education, the lower sense of security among the Chinese. And you can say that it's saying that the higher the level of income, the lower sense of security. Or the younger you are, the lower sense of security. I think it's applied to different groups. And among those who have relatively low educational level, most of them will attribute the tension, current difficulties in China-US relations to the United States. On the other hand, if you ask those who have doctor or master degree in China, there is a tendency that they perceive the conflicts of the interest of the two countries as a mainstream, or you can say two countries have their, both sides should be, or at least it's understandable that we have this conflict because we have different interests and different values. So you can see this like these are the about the age. The older people have a more pessimistic view, and the younger people have the relatively the older people have an optimistic view, and the younger people have a pessimistic view. And those people who have higher education level, they are relatively pessimistic. As the level of education increase, there is a more pessimistic outlook on the future development of U.S.-China relations. And also people with higher level of education tends to assess China's global influence more unfavorable. Those who well-educated believe the U.S. is stronger than China, but for those who educated less, they think China is more powerful. So I like this. This is David Shambo's book, very old book. I like the title of the book very much, so I use this picture. David Shambo, I think that's the early 1990s. He published this book called Beautiful Imperialist. China perceived America as from 72 to 99. So beautiful imperialist in Chinese, they say 美帝, right? 美帝. So this explain, this title of the book, tell us something very interestingly. Traditionally, historically, China's, the ordinary Chinese perspective about their perception on China, on the United States come from two sources. One positive, the other is negative. The positive sources is from the domestic situation, from the domestic governance of the United States. Chinese people tends to believe that the US has a democratic political system, have a well-off society, a very advanced technology, and the good governance here. So many Chinese like the US domestic governance here. But at the same time, the negative perception of the Chinese people on the US mainly comes from the foreign policy, from the D part, right? The imperialist part. It's foreign policy, and particularly its policy towards China. So when the two countries have have some disputes, conflicts, and the U.S. always we believe from Chinese perspective, we believe the U.S. pressed China a lot on human rights, on at that time on trade, on Tibet, on those key issues. We think this is bad. This is the negative part. So it's a love and hate sentiments, right? Love from the domestic sources, and hate from or dislikeness from the foreign policy part. But the question we are asking today is the U.S. still a beautiful country? 美国是不是还很美? Is the U.S. still a beautiful country? And has the U.S. become even more imperialist, or even more aggressive, even more, hostile to China? This is the two questions that many Chinese are asking. Obviously, I think many people believe in China, they believe that U.S. is facing huge domestic challenges. I think to some extent, I think that's true, that the U.S. is facing many domestic issues. So particularly if you follow the Chinese official media, every day you have some bad news about the U.S., right? No matter it's a social, racial relations, or gun violence, or some other, some fire in Hawaii or flood in California. So anyway, so there's something, about the domestic governance. So the perception in China, I think, is changing. They believe that, and also, it's also true that the gap of the two countries has narrowed. That's true. So many people in 1980s, 1990s, they believe the U.S. leads a lot, now. But now people tends to believe that the two countries domestically becomes, I won't say China already, catch up with the U.S., but the gap has been narrowing. But at the same time, many people believe that the U.S. foreign policy to China has changed even more into that imperialist direction, or I will say negative direction. So the key is the US image in China has evolving from a value-based or a rule-based country into a power-based country. I think this is the most important changes in China regarding our view towards the US. So in the past, we believe that US stands for kinds of rules or kinds of values. And the US always criticized China for not adhere to the rules, or your value is some problematic. You have human rights issue. You have your political system is not democratic. It's about norm. It's about value. It's about rule. And many people in China, particularly the intellectuals, those who are educated very well, those who more or less liberal, they will argue in China, they say, so long as we reform our system, so long as we try to stay in the system, so long as we try to adhere to the rules, then the US will give us space to grow. The US will give us the space to develop. So we can peacefully develop our own country, we can peacefully rise, and we can even peacefully one day surpass the US to become the number one superpower in the world, so long as we within this so-called liberal international order framework, right? So this has been for a very long time an argument of the intellectuals in China. But in past 5 years, I will say the majority view has changed. No matter the ordinary people or elites, I think many people, they believe now the US just don't want China to surpass the US. I think this is the basic fact, the basic perception that many Chinese have, no matter they're ordinary people or the elite, they think the US is trying to keep China down. The US is trying to slow China's development. US will not excuse me, the US will not allow China to dominate in some strategic important area, like in today we discussed about Huawei. Actually, in Huawei's case, it's not because Huawei. You can say Huawei violate the sanction to Iran. You can say some people in their branch in Poland did some bad things, but for such a big companies, I mean, the U.S. reaction to Huawei, and not only ban it here, but also try to persuade the islands to ban Huawei in their countries, in the whole Western world, gave us an impression that U.S. just don't want a Chinese company, a company from a communist party-led country to dominate that such a strategically important factor, important industry. That's a telecommunication. And also like something like TikTok or Shein, this kind of internet company just cannot let China to dominate in that. But of course, people talk about cyber, like data security and other privacy issues. But I mean, this afternoon I also talked to Victor. I said, "Give me a smoking gun." Okay. There's no smoking gun, no evidence, just a perceived threat. I think then U.S. made many, very strong reaction to that. For us, this is, evidence to show that U.S. actually want to stop China, or want to lead China forever, particularly in those high-tech area. So probably this is my last slide, I guess. So for the intellectuals, you may say, yeah, China, many people say Chinese government manipulate the media, brainwashing the people. I think that's true. I mean, of course, in every country, I think there are some areas that you cannot discuss, you cannot touch upon. There is some kind of political correctness in every country. For Chinese elites, they know the world quite well. And many of them study here. We still have 300,000 young students study in the United States. They understand the US very much. You cannot explain if they also have very negative image about the US, what happened? You cannot say this is brainwashing, right? They study here. And for those people like me, I use VPN every day. I visit US for I don't know how many times, many times. I think, yeah, I totally understand, what is happening, why those people in China perceive the US so negatively. for the elites, I mean, well, acknowledging China's own problem, China have a lot of problem, and I think the challenges and the problem we have, for me, I will say Chinese government made many mistakes and wrong policies. I think it should be attributed to that first. But admitting that China had problem and also policy mistakes, I think many Chinese scholars still believe, I think this is kind of consensus among scholars, no matter they study the US or not study the US, among officials, no matter they're from ministry or from other ministry. I think it can become kind of consensus that US is trying to keep China down. So I think this is something really fundamental change. I don't know the end game of China-US competition. I will say this change of perception will have a very long-lasting negative impact on US image in China. Let's imagine in the future, I don't know who will, if we'll continue to compete in the future, I don't know. Let's imagine two kinds of end game. The first end game is, China stop develop or slowest development, and the US, yes, lead, continue to be number one. China's GDP now today, this last year was 65% of the US. I think maybe after 10 years, let's say China becomes 30% of the US. How will Chinese intellectual view the US by that time? Of course, they will say, hey, the Chinese government made a lot of mistakes, but the external factor, the US factor is still some kind of important factor. That even made me when I read book of history, 100 years ago, 120 years ago, when China had the Boxer rebellion at that time, you can say, yeah, those people at the Qing dynasty, the government made a lot of mistakes, but having a foreign troop to invade China, punish China, gave China, such an unfair treaty, made many intellectuals in China feel humiliated. And that kind of sense of humiliation lasts for very, very long time. And it will impact their view on the US, impact China's policy to the US in next 5 decades or 6 decades. I think I don't want to exaggerate the situation, but I will say similar thing is happening. There is a sense of humiliation among the scholars, those who admit China is making some mistakes. But even though China is making mistakes, the US policy for those people is kind of humiliating for them. And let's imagine another outcome, another endgame. China surpassed the US. In 10 years later, China become the largest economy in the world. Then those people, nationalistic people in China will say, you see, no matter US, no matter what they do, what do they want to achieve, we can achieve our goal. Our system is good. Our path is correct. We should continue, right? We should continue our current path. That will also have a very strong negative impact on the US image and the China-US relations. So that's very, very, no matter which endgame we will see, I see this kind of deterioration of US image in China is something I will say, I won't say forever, but will be there for a very long time. And it cannot be reversed already. Bad thing already happened. So I think the US image, at least as my conclusion, the US image currently is at its lowest point in at least past 40 years since the establishment of the diplomatic relation. And if I'm not exaggerate that, I would say probably the US image is at its lowest point in past 200 years. You may say, of course, the US image was bad from 1949 to 1979. Yes, that's true. But at that time, the two countries had no link, no exchanges, right? Chinese people didn't know the US very well at that time. So if we exclude those 3 decades of very unusual decades that we have zero contact, then in past 200 years, we have some kind of exchanges, communication, we travel to each other, we know each other. within those 170 years, probably today is the worst, time that many people in China believe the U.S. have a bad, malicious intention towards China. This something has never happened in history. So I think that's really, really, dark situation I want to explain. Okay, I think I should stop here. How long? Already 30 minutes, so it's already too long. Okay, thank you very much. So comments and questions are welcome.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
So I just have a couple questions for you to get things going. First, I really love your talk, and especially we're very data centric here. So you start with the data. So the audience here at UCSD, we'd love to look at data. So how do you compare these more attitudinal metrics, like survey data, to behavioral metrics, right? So the behavioral metrics that we see is, obviously, first and foremost, Chinese students coming to America to study. It has gone down, but not by that much. So it's like gone down by maybe 15, 20%. Yes. And basically, although part of that decrease is due to the age cohort, right? So they're getting smaller and smaller in China because of, population issues. Also economic weakness recently, also, and the renminbi has weakened to some extent in the past couple of years. So if you net out those factors, maybe has gone down by like 10%, or something like that, because of this attitudinal thing, which is not so bad. Same thing with Japan. Japan's always been, had a very negative image in China, but is still one of the favorite tourist destinations of people in China. They love going to Japan to shop, to eat, and stuff like that. What's more important? Like, is this attitudinal deterioration, which is very bad, but like we still see a lot of students from China coming here. Maybe it's not so bad. And I would say the smartest people in China, they're still quite attracted to America, although we're doing some things that are very negative on that front that we should change for sure. Like investigating scientists and all that kind of stuff. That is definitely a US problem. But up to this point has had a negative impact, but not disastrous so far. Although, who knows who becomes president next? It could become a big disaster. But how do you compare the attitudinal versus the behavioral, and why does the attitude still matter nonetheless?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. This is a very, very good question. I think the change of the attitude will not always tend into a behavior, changes like not going to the US for education or not go to Japan for holiday. I don't think so. Those people who study in the United States, maybe we have some Chinese students today here. They choose to study here in the US, but at the same time, their perception about the US, I think maybe it's different from those people, let's say 10, 20 years ago, when still we have relatively, we didn't have so many students here at that time, but I think they admire the US very much. And when they become the national leader, the make a leader in, for example, in the government or lead a company, I think their understanding of the US is different. But today, when the younger generation, they know the US, I won't say they will demonize the United States. They know their different new perception of the US, when they bring this new perception back to China, I think it will, in the long run, it will shape China's policy to the United States. So this policy, this attitude change will turn out to be an active policy to the United States, but maybe it won't have big impact on people's daily life, like going abroad, studying, or tourists. I don't think so. Yes.
Okay. So my second question is I actually did the reading myself. I tried to feed it through ChatGPT, but didn't really do so well. So I read a few of your articles, the whole text myself, and you've written a lot about the international order, right? And the role of the U.S. in international order.
Yeah.
Of course, as you point out in some of your articles, and it is true, there's a dark side to the liberal international order, which is the use of force, right? So for a couple hundred years, first the British and then the United States had to use force, primarily naval force, to enforce the global international order. We haven't seen China do that so much, right? So, I mean, one of the questions like, well, let's say the US is in decline, as you point out at the end of your talk. China is on the ascendant. At some point, it would have to back up a new order with the use of force beyond the borders of China, right? So we're not talking about the Taiwan Straits, which is China in a sense. Beyond that, I mean, what are the circumstances you think will finally compel the Chinese leadership to use force beyond the borders of China?
I think it's still too early to ask Chinese leadership to think about that, to be honest. Everybody believes China wants a new global order. I don't think so. I mean, for Chinese leader, China has never had a global vision of global order. China, in ancient time, China was a superpower in Asia, but we only know that area. We only have an order of the periphery area. We didn't have a global order at that time. So today, when you ask no matter Chinese leader or ordinary Chinese, what kind of global order do you want? I really don't think they care so much about the Middle East or Africa or Latin America. So China now still focusing on the neighboring area. And of course, China so far is still quite cautious using military force. I don't know if it will change in the future. I hope not. Chinese leader talked a lot about global order, but to be honest, I don't think Chinese, no matter leader or intellectuals, really have a feasible vision of an order that we can implement. We can turn it into a reality. I don't think so. When you read those initiatives, Chinese government has 3 initiatives. And maybe you have better understanding of that. I read that carefully. I still don't know what we want. I mean, everything is included in those 3 initiatives. It's good, but it's not a different. It's not like Soviet Union. They have a different order. That's right. It's clear it's different order, and they know how to implement that, and they do it step by step, no matter by peaceful means or military means. I don't think China have that yet.
I mean, just a quick follow-up, like, as you know, the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, there's this problem with the Houthi attacking merchant ships. Here is a good opportunity for China to step in, right? Because China now has the largest navy in the world. I mean, by tonnage, supposedly China has the largest navy. It's had a lot of practice, with long distance missions and so on and so forth. I mean, China has used force for piracy and stuff like that on a small scale. The trade that's being disrupted is Chinese trade. When China ships goods to Europe, it goes through the Suez. So it has very good reason to protect that shipping lane. Why is it not doing anything? Because in the end of the day, the US still has to come in and protect the shipping route. And then people say, oh, well, the US is still a hegemon, blah, blah. Why doesn't China do more in that case?
China is a quite weird country. In the past, I think China, from late 1970s to maybe 2008, China is very reluctant to use any coercive means to solve the problem. Then in past 10 years, many Western countries criticize China for using military, economic coercive measures to other countries. But we should notice that all those countries claimed to be used the economic coercive measures are the partners and allies of the United States. So China feel more comfortable to press the countries that we believe not our partners, not our friends, and probably hostile countries. I think this is also something new, relatively new in past 10 years. China gradually more willing to use some coercive means against, let's say, South Korea, Australia, maybe some European countries, or Japan. China feel quite hard to press our friends, or maybe not friends, but some country or entity not hostile to China.
Mhm.
I mean, like Russia, everybody say you need to press Russia, right?
Yeah.
China feel very difficult to do that. Or even earlier, North Korea, many people say you need to press North Korea. We feel quite hard, and we feel if it's in UN framework, it's okay, but we won't do it unilaterally. And then now many people say you need to press Iran and let them to press Houthis. We think that's not I think Chinese government official already talked to Iranian government, let them try to help them, try to let them to stop Houthi. And some of them even told me Chinese government official talked to Houthis directly. I don't know. I cannot verify that, but I don't know. But if so, I mean, even if that's true, maybe just a talk. Say you should be restrained. You should not do that. I mean, without you only. I mean, this talk is not just talk. I don't think China can give them carrot. I don't think China can give them stick. So I don't think that will be
China
very
has a
useful.
stick now. It's the largest navy in the world.
But China is feel very uncomfortable to use this stick. So we use some stick economically. Militarily, no. I think China still have a very long way to go in that regard.
Great, thanks. Let's open up to questions. Well, you can direct yourself. Well, we could start with Professor Kwong.
Okay.
I've about the survey.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about the survey? How many people were interviewed? How was it done? Did it reach the rural people? So that's the question that I have is, let's say, having this information, the Chinese leadership also understands this information. What do you think this information will tell the Chinese leadership do next? Will the Chinese leadership look at this information and say, we're doing it right? Our people are behind us. The Chinese are viewing US unfavorably. We should just be with our people. Or would the government say, well, this is really bad, right? We want to improve relationship with the superpower of the world. We need to do something to improve the image of the US. Would the Chinese government even do that? I mean, in other words, would this type of information, how would this information be used by the policymakers?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I think this is a very important two questions I need to explain. First, about the survey itself. As I said at the beginning, we work with a partner who is professionally doing this survey. And they do it, I think half of the respondents from telephone and half of them on internet. And about 3,200, I think. I forgot the accurate number, but about that samples. We have that's nationwide. It's according to China's population. So different. We consider the gender, the level of income, education, and the rural, urban. So different provinces, every provinces is covered. So basically, I think it's quite scientific. Based on my knowledge, I think it's okay. And the outcome, I don't know how Chinese government. I mean, to be honest, my biggest concern is maybe the Chinese government. Some senior official came to me say, "Hey, why are you doing this? You should not do it next year." So for me, keeping safe is the first priority, right? So the good outcome is nobody say anything. Nobody say anything bad about this, and they encourage us to do it further. I mean, every year. And some Chinese government official, they came to me and say, "I feel surprised about this outcome. Why they are so confident? I mean, for example, confident about China's influence in the war, or why the people are so optimistic." Because I think those kind of questions, those officials who ask those questions actually reflects an opinion of elite. They are just the people, just like scholars. I think they share a similar view like us. This world is not safe. China's external environment is not good, and China is not, the most influential actor in the world. Influenced, but maybe not number one. But then they feel. Then they question our methodology, and then of course I need to explain the methodology to them. and persuade them that you are minority too, though you are leading this country, but you are minority in this country. Then I don't know what is the further implication if they will, when they go home, they will say, am I wrong or something? I don't know. And sometimes the outcome, the funding of this survey is sometimes quite interesting. I mean, make those government officials maybe they feel hard to take action. For example, one of the questions I didn't show this. One of the question is, do you think what kind of style, diplomatic style, you think China need to adopt in next 5 years? It's more will you proactive or more passive? I think about 80% of people say China need to be more proactive. And then we ask them some questions like, do you think China should increase foreign aid in order to be more progressive, proactive? They say no. Majority of them say we already ate too much. So I mean, this is, I didn't ask them, maybe I should ask them, do you want to send your kids to the battlefield to achieve those? Probably they will say no, right? So people are always selfish. You know, if I ask them, do you want to reunify with Taiwan? I will say 90%, 99% say I want. But do you want to fight a war? Probably not that high. I mean, so those outcomes are sometimes contradictory to each other. I don't think it will give the decision maker an easy answer, say, after reading that, I should change my policy. I don't think so. Yes, maybe. Yeah, maybe the last one. Yes, in the back. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for sharing. So Lei and I, we actually run a survey at the China Center. We also found that Chinese people are very, very optimistic. So even in the middle of this economic downturn, our survey results found that people are very optimistic about their future, their household economic well-being in 5 years, and also the national economy. So that's a statement in support of your argument. The question that I want to ask you is actually about, the puzzle. Given the sheer size of Chinese students present in the U.S., there still seems to be a lot of miscommunication, misperception. I wonder if, from your perspective, if there is a missed opportunity here. I feel it's like the cities we choose to come to, the schools we choose to enroll in. Is there something about our activity that prevents us from actually developing the right image of the U.S. and conveying it back to China? If I'm not a PhD student, I've also heard from my own college, even 10 years ago, that Chinese students don't integrate very well, that they always sit in different tables. So if that is, I don't know how common that is, but if that continues, then we are not contributing to any communication.
When you say we, you mean
I'm a Chinese national.
You mean Chinese students here?
Yes.
Chinese students.
I think first missed opportunity is when Chinese students is that I work in Tsinghua University, so the graduates from Tsinghua who is willing to go abroad is declining, I would say. I think I don't have a very accurate number, but if my memory is correct, maybe now 17% of Tsinghua graduate will go abroad. So before COVID, I think that number was 25%. I think it's declining. I think I'm some teacher who teach this. I think I also live abroad, so I think that will be a missed opportunity. If Chinese don't, at the individual level, it will broaden your viewpoints. At the national level, I think China will lose some opportunity to have really top layer talents. And after getting to the United States, I think you already mentioned a very important issue. I think Chinese has become more and more stick to Chinese. I think this is not very new, I will say, at least in past 10 years or maybe 20 years. They talk to each other, they stay each other. So in some university, we have a lot of students, Chinese students, I mean. So it's like in China. So I really hope that the Chinese students here can appreciate the good part of this country and also the strength and understand the culture, the history. I still remember in the year 2006, at that time I lived in DC, I talked to a Japanese friend he got his PhD in GW, George Washington in 1960s. And he told me what worried him at that time was, he said, when I got my PhD at that time, all the Japanese students want to stay in the United States. And every time when they have vacation, they travel a lot in this country, try to understand this country very well. But now he is, work for, at that time he worked for a major Japanese company. He said my subordinates, my colleagues, and when they have a day off, they will fly back to Tokyo. They believe Tokyo is the best city in the world. And Tokyo is nice, but I mean, since you work here, you study here, I understand this country is very, very important. But I think we are lacking, the Chinese students are gradually losing their interest in the country they are studying. I think this will be a, lifelong, lost. I really hope the Chinese students can step out and integrate with others. Yeah. Maybe we should, gender balance.
I'm one of the students from China. I'm actually from Zhejiang province. I really want to step out to see how American people view China. So thank you for sharing. My question is also related to your data, because as we all know that in China, we don't have a freely flow information. I wonder, how do you think that the government's control over information actually affect people's view about ourselves? Is that because even in the social media, we have a censorship system, the content you upload to Libby or Red, it's under the censorship. So is that a beautiful bubble actually created by the government and make us feel more positive about ourselves?
Yeah, thank you. This is a very, and also thank you for your frankness. I think it's true. Let's say it's true. In our survey, I also said that the richer you are, probably, is put it in a simple way, the elites, their view are very, very different from those ordinary people. The reason is those elites are more capable of getting out of that bubble you mentioned. I think they have opportunity to study or working abroad. They know English. They can read foreign media directly. So yes, government can control or can manage this public opinion, but I don't think they can dominate this field. In China, at least among the government officials and among the intellectuals, I don't think their view on the U.S. is totally controlled. Of course, sometimes since you live in China, of course you receive a lot of negative view about the U.S. But I don't want to exaggerate the role of the government in the public opinion shaping. Sometimes it's not about the censorship. Sometimes it's about Chinese interacting with Chinese. So we have kind of echo chamber effect in China. It's not necessarily linked to censorship. So you can break it. You can only break it when you step out of the country and interact with other peoples. So government is more influential among the ordinary people, but I don't think they can control the elites. This is my short answer to your question. Thank you for that.
Get an online question?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a couple questions online that sort of boil down to what events could happen or what could the U.S. do that would improve everyday Chinese citizens' views of the United States?
Yeah. Oh, that's a very good question. And this afternoon, I also discussed this with this scholar here. I think the key, the something that our American friends and colleagues need to reflect for me is, I really feel sad that the U.S. is losing its, I call it uniqueness among Chinese. By uniqueness, I mean, for many particularly liberal intellectuals in China, the US is some country very different from traditional superpowers. As I said, US stands for something, right? US stands for kind of value, norm, rules. So it's different from Soviet Union, it's different from the Great Britain or Rome, these countries. But what the current and the previous administration have done, I think, gave us an impression that US is not a unique country. US is just an ordinary country that will try to keep the second country down. I think this is something our American friends need to reflect. Maybe I'm wrong. The US is an ordinary country, then okay, forget what I'm saying. But if the US still believe your country is not a, there is some, I think American people view your country as some kind of exceptional, right? Exceptional country. You have this exceptionalist. If so, back to the policy level. I would say, for instance, if you want to ban Huawei, give me a real evidence to show Huawei already, or is very clear evidence that it is going to hurt the U.S. interest. If not, maybe do something to. I don't think it will happen, but I mean, I need those solid evidence, and also like entity list. We have hundreds of Chinese entity were put on that list of the Department of Commerce. So why don't we? I mean, China and the U.S. two sides sit down together and check the list. Are we correct to put all those? I mean, are you correct to put all those institutes or companies on that list? To be honest, the U.S. just removed one institute.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you know
Police
this.
work,
Yeah, that's from the Ministry of Public Security. The U.S. removed that institute from the list. It sounds like a good thing, right? But for me,
It's arbitrary.
yeah, I mean, that just shows U.S. put that list on that institute on the list for some, I don't know for what. If that institute did hurt the U.S. interest, you should keep it on there. If it did not hurt the U.S. interest, you should not put it on the list. U.S. remove it just because U.S. want China, the Ministry of Public Security, to have dialogue with the U.S. administration to fight against fentanyl. So that's a transactional thing, right? So I think that I believe this is not in the U.S. interest because it just gave those people in China an evidence. You see, U.S. just do it randomly and use it as a bargain chip, right? To talk to Chinese. So this is very un-American for me. Yeah. So we need to sit down and check those lists and other things. All like tariff things. Nobody mentioned tariff now. President Biden promised he will cut tariffs when he ran for president, but now it's already the third year, and the U.S. has inflation here. Cutting tariff is for the interest for the two sides and maybe other parties, but just because of the Congress, you cannot do that. You're afraid that your political will be attacked. You cannot do that. I think that's something not healthy. I mean, from my perspective, that's something that we can do together at least. Yes.
What about the recent deal, I guess it's a deal, between the San Diego Zoo and the facility in China to transfer him to the zoo by the end of the summer?
Yeah.
It may be something that's laughable to most of you, but to me, it's a major decision where the two countries are cooperating.
Yes.
Can
It's a
you
major
give us any background on how that could have happened?
To be honest, I don't know. I feel it's, of course, that's a very good news. Of course, I know that. I was in Central Asia with Susan, Professor Susan Shirk, when the two governments decided to transmit this to panda back to it and to send them to San Diego, and the student just jumped and said, "Oh, she was so happy about that." For me, it's, I really I don't have answer to you, but I don't know the story, but I really don't understand why can't China, if the US need more panda, I mean, for scientific reason, for other reason, China have thousands of panda. I don't understand. I don't understand, to be honest. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes.
Yes. I have a question. The U.S. review survey you mentioned. I read this survey in one of the New York Times articles like a year ago. They pointed out that before 2017, it's basically flat. It was flat. Just after 2017, it went back very quickly. And they pointed out it was after someone took over the US government. Would that be the case for China too? Time-wise?
China, I don't have this historic statistic. I don't know when has the Chinese, negative view towards the US start to rapidly grow. But I mean, what the phenomenon you pointed out is actually theoretically we call it securitization. Securitization. We securitize everything. Panda was not a security thing, right? But maybe one day we will say Panda is something related to security because it will. It's not like, I mean, I talked to some State Department official. They told me that China's cartoon, the cartoon we made is a security issue because it will make the American kid feel that China is a normal country that can produce fundable cartoons. That's a government official told me this. That's something, I mean, securitize everything. Yeah, and he told me that EV is a security thing. It's not because market share, this kind of thing. It's that because China produces very good EV. When I drive Chinese EV, I will believe that China is a reliable country. I mean, this is a securitization, and in the process of securitization, leadership play a key role. So you need someone to break the ice and put it into a category of security first. That is, in this country, I think the former President Trump played a role in that, and then media elites play the role follower, to produce theory and a set of argument to portray the other side as a security threat. So I mean, of course, leadership plays a role. You correctly pointed that it's after Trump become president. It's true. I don't have statistics to show that if it's in China, I believe we have the same thing. Because I think because theory, this is security study theory. I think I accept that argument, but I don't have empirical evidence in China to show that. But I still believe probably that's true in everyone.
So we're out of time, unfortunately. Please remember that next Thursday we have Professor Dali Yang from University of Chicago talking about his new book on how the COVID-19 outbreak in China spiraled out of control in Wuhan. In the meantime, please join me in thanking Professor Dali for such a